Hello, welcome to this new podcast we got here, 50 Ways to Hate an Album with... Indeed, with my name's Marv, and your name is?
I'm Mez, or Merritt, or James.
I mean, that's three already, so can I call you all three?
You could call me all three at different intervals if you'd like.
Okay, I'll stick with Mez, so...
I like that.
Yeah, exactly, exciting times.
It means honey in Hungarian. So,
okay.
I'm hyped for that.
Don't get any ideas. I mean, I might call you honey, but whatever. Okay. Yeah, so we got this new podcast idea. I kind of had it floating in my brain for ages because I'm fascinated by like what people call bad albums or like terrible albums, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Because you just think, well, how bad can something really be? Like, I can't think of a piece of music where I've had to shut it off. It's like completely unlistenable. And yeah, it just kind of started like a fascination of, well, okay, how bad really is it? So you listen to these certain albums that you see in critic polls and in classic rock, all these magazines and things. And then you have a little bit of a kind of this and you think, well, okay, oh yeah, that must be bad. Oh, that is a little bit bad, but I don't know. Yeah. Then you kind of buy into certain bands and you think,
absolutely, yeah.
You think it ain't that bad.
This is the thing. I mean, I think a lot of the time we're influenced by what our peers sort of say in terms of like what's good or bad.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if I'm talking to somebody who's not too hyped in music or they're not too into a certain band, I hate doing it. I hate pulling the card. However, a good way to sort of back people down is to say something like, if they're just saying like, oh, this is crap, this is just crap, and giving no reasoning, you could kind of respond with, well, music is art because expression is art, and therefore it cannot be criticised because it's all to do with the context, and you can also add in the argument of beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
I love it, honey, I love it.
Yeah, there we go. So that's kind of my stance on it. I think it's like the whole guilty pleasures thing, you know, when someone says something like, oh, I don't really want to admit it, but I really love that song. And you're like, well, why don't you want to admit it? I think it's important to accept songs that you like because, I mean, it seems a bit silly feeling guilty for enjoying a piece of music. You know, somebody's created that. People have worked on that. So, I mean... Yeah, I think people put a lot of importance on sort of status, perhaps, or social standing when it comes to, oh, he listens to that. You don't want to, you know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I think, you know, when you're younger, if I think about primary school or something, and I liked a bit of pop music, like Spice Girls was huge when I was about 8 years old. And, I mean, they're fantastically written pop songs, but...
Absolutely.
You know, you would be embarrassed if people knew you liked it, and you know, because you weren't this or you weren't that, and you had a kind of, you're still trying to be a person in this world and build up who you are. So I think for me, a guilty pleasure was more of like a younger thing, and then you get older, and especially as us two being musicians in lovely COVID times, we've got a lot of time to listen to music. Yeah,
a lot of free time.
You know, I think you see how the sausage is made, so to speak. So you have a way deeper understanding of, okay, I understand why this works. Maybe it's not for me. I think it's more like that, isn't it? Like you have a meal and you kind of go, that ain't for me, that one. I can leave that there, but you don't think it's terrible.
I think that as you get older, you tend to be kinder about the bands that you listen to. The music generally you're listening to, I mean, I'm way too kind about the bands I like. If I like something, I like something, you know? Yeah. If I don't enjoy it as much or I've listened to it too much, it's overplayed, I'll tend to avoid it. I won't say I hate it or I dislike it or, I can't stand that. It's just a case of picking out, like a diamond in the rough, but not so much in that same sort of, to me, that's how it works.
That's how that's how the cookie crumbles in the West, in the
That
in
is
the
how
South.
the cookie crumbles. Yeah, you know, he's correct there.
Eloquently. So
at last.
Oh, that's the first one. So just as a side note to anyone listening, we're obsessed with The Office UK. Now, I introduced it to you in probably 2015, 16, and you'd never heard it
must
before.
be around that time.
It's definitely about our third year of uni. And you were hooked, and it just became an obsession. And we had to quote it any time we could, in any scenario, up to the point now where we're in this office group, and it's like any photo that comes in, you know, people will caption a random photo of Boris Johnson, and it's like you just have to get everything.
It's got to be, it's got to every single, like, it gets ridiculous to the point of something completely unrelated has got to be like crowbarred in to make it have some sort of relevance to this show. But you know, Ricky Gervais, Stephen Martin, Merchant.
Stephen Martin.
No,
Stephen Martin.
Who's Stephen Martin?
I mean,
well,
great guy.
I've mentioned him now. Roy's. But yes, so back to the point.
Back to the point of what we're going to put an office number, so limiter. So every time we do an office quote, because we promised ourselves it would just be an absolute shambles if we just were just to go wild and just talk whatever we wanted to. So we're going to try and limit it down, but we're going to keep it. Absolutely. We're going to keep a count of how many we do. Not try and fit ourselves too much. And that's the game. That's 2. So we'll have that. Anyways,
we'll keep that.
Anyways, we'll introduce ourselves. So.
Yes, you go ahead.
I'll go ahead. Okay, let me have a little sippy.
You go ahead.
Bit of throat coat teeth, lovely. So, my name's Marv. I am 31 years young. As you know,
I like that.
I love it. I've been playing music since I was about 8 years old. I think I inherited a little keyboard from my sister, and I remember the first songs I ever played were the Beverly Hills Cop theme song, so the Axel F one.
Fantastic.
Lovely. And Let It Be by the Beatles, because it was like pre-programmed on the keyboard itself. So it would show you the notes on the little kind of MIDI thing, and I just play it. And yeah, I mean, amazing. Grew up listening to stuff like that, like the Beatles, and then got into guitar about 17, which is relatively late considering. And then just try to hone my skills as much as I can, you know, learn all these Beatles songs, Chili Peppers songs, just obsessed with like chord changes and like trying to get them to sound right on this battered acoustic, you know, and
yes,
it's just amazing. So go to uni, BIM, meet you.
Me,
and you with your tuxedo shirt. And,
can't go wrong,
and
can't go
Hawaiian
wrong.
Shorts. What a character.
They'll live forever.
Live forever.
They'll live forever.
And yeah, go to uni. So I do the guitar course, meet you. 3 years of that. Great time. Loved it.
3 years of that.
3 years of that, yeah. Well, it was great, you know. Made a lot of best friends, met a lot of good mates, and met you as well. So added bonus. And then we formed a function band, got signed up to an agency, and started doing gigs, started gigging a lot, becoming professional musicians, which, you know, for me was the point of going to university. You know, I was working as a butcher, a vegetarian butcher, which was amazing. Coming and smelling the fish and meat and liver.
Lovely.
And yeah, you know, that started picking up. That was really good. So we really honed in our performances and playing the same songs over and over and over again, but like playing weddings and first dances, the nervousness of playing that and make sure and getting it right, and I don't know, earning a good living, and with all of us being really good mates, so it made it really, really good. But for now, that hasn't been our income's been taken away, so we've been trying to do other things. Hence why we're doing this podcast, you know, kind of something to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's really about me then. So how about you, Steve Martin?
You've just condensed 30 odd years into about 2 minutes, and I respect it.
There you go. You have to respect the game, you know. Go on, Mez. You tell us your story.
Okay, so my actual name's James, but I am known as Mez for various reasons. I started playing guitar when I was about 15, but music was always very prevalent in the house. My mum is a massive Queen fan, and she's very much into Genesis, Status Quo, you know, the classic sort of rock giants, dare I say, of the time. And yeah, she's into more modern things as well. She likes Robbie Williams. She also likes Neo, which interesting mix.
Yeah.
Interesting mix.
Go on, Max.
But I do like Neo myself. I find myself bopping along these days when I'm cleaning the checkouts in Asda because I cannot play live at this moment in time.
The supermarkets are available for jobs, so
yeah, of course, we are not. What's the word? We're not sponsored. This is not sponsored.
We're welcoming with all shops. So
all shops, equal opportunities for retail. That's what I say. So yeah, Status Quo were the first band I got into heavily.
Yeah.
Heavily. And I believe I first saw them when I was about 13, 14.
Is that in Bristol?
That was in Bristol, yeah. It was at the Colston Hall. Okay. So I remember entering the room and there's that exciting feeling, you know, there's that energy. And you get the backing track come on, and the lights go down, and you're kind of just like, so you know, nothing can replace it. That feeling, you know, guys. Some people enjoy a crowded bar, which I also do. I would like to add. Some people, not at the moment though. Some people enjoy a football stadium, and having been to see a few rugby matches, that energy is there. But for me, it's just that stale smell of someone's dropped a beer 4,000 years ago on the floor. There's hundreds of sweaty bodies packed tight into a small space. I've drawn you a picture here.
I like it.
You know, the lights go down, the intro music begins, and yeah, they come out. There's no other feeling like it. But at 14 years old, not many friends, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Francis Rossi, the lead guitarist and vocalist of Status Quo, comes out on stage, stands front center, and starts banging out Caroline. That was it. I was sold. It's cliche. You've heard it a million times before, but it was really one of those fork in the road moments.
Caroline is the song, right? Not a woman.
No, Caroline is the song.
Because that would have been a totally different, illegal show. Yeah, very, very different reality to a young, impressionable 14-year-old Mez. I could tell you that. Here look, mum, he's banging Caroline out. So.
Yeah. Thanks for taking it there. But yeah, and I saw that. I think I've seen them about 5 times now, all in all. I've been to countless other shows, and again, when I was about 14, 15, Status Quo were the only band that mattered. I couldn't care less about anybody else. No. And then I heard Enter Sandman by Metallica. Now, that turned my world upside down. And that was when I started getting into Slayer, Lamb of God, Dream Theater. And yeah, a number, they just all, like I said, it's the cliche kind of changed my life, music changed my life, keeps me alive, you know, that sort of thing. But it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I think we had this discussion the other day where we said that if music weren't to exist, we would not want to be here.
I mean, yeah, like, obviously, we're not going to, like, you know, exit the world, so to speak.
No.
But
given the option.
I cannot imagine not, it's like people who say they don't like music. It really boggles my brain because it's there's just so much pleasant music out there. Like there's so much music. There's surely gonna be something that you bound to like.
That blows my mind a little bit because I had a friend like that at school. They were kind of like, nah, not really bothered about music. So that that confuses me somewhat.
Yeah, definitely,
quite a lot.
Definitely.
But so I left school with the idea of going to Fowler's in Bristol city centre to start an apprenticeship, and that was when I met I'd met this chap before, but he'd locked himself out of his house and he was playing guitar.
Yeah.
And by seeing him there, that made me start talking to him because he played guitar, and I was learning at the time. A friend of mine was teaching me. And I kind of thought this guy's cool. He plays music, like, you know, the classic story. And we became best friends. He encouraged me to go to Bath College to do the music performance course. And we formed a band. We were really happy with the music that we made. Well, it was mostly him by that point. And from then on, I went to BIM. And the story pretty much, it sort of goes along the same sort of dynamic and road as yours does now, Marv. You know, I joined BIM. I had direction. All I knew was I wanted to play my guitar and make money. Yeah. That was my only direction. So when you guys approached me, well, I say you guys, it was you who approached me and invited me to join. It was a fantastic opportunity and I couldn't turn it down. And here we are, 5 years on? Nearly 6?
I mean, we've been gigging for I would say 4 years, 2016 to 2020. Okay. Technically, I guess 5 if it's 2021. Obviously, there's no gigs, but I think you got in there like 2015 was probably when we asked you, right? So
that sounds about right. Yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah.
But yeah, and we can kind of now talk about, I guess,
get into the juice of the matter.
The juice, the bad songs, the things, terrible, whatever. But I pulled up a set list that we had, and again, like, really I play these songs so much, or we have, to the point where I don't really even think about them, because when you're performing, you're focused on how you look, you're focused on how you're playing, and if there's any audience interaction, you feed off of that, so then it almost negates what you're playing. But we play these songs so much, you know, that anytime you go anywhere and you hear them, you're just like, oh,
not again.
There's just an audible sigh. Yeah. The only two that I can think from this like kind of typical set list we play, which I just can't stand, "Happy" by Pharrell Williams and "Chelsea Dagger" by the Fratellis. I cannot stand those songs. I don't know what it is. I don't know. "Chelsea Dagger" we haven't played that much. We only played it when we went to like a ski season. With like a party band, and that was a good thing. Again, people go nuts for that song. It's a bit like,
they love it.
It's a bit like Seven Nation Army, but I think it's the structure. I think that there's not a lot of like meat to the song, and
no,
it just drives me mad. Like, even when Robbie, our drummer, starts playing like the drum intro, I'm just like, oh, there's something about it. Just a little bit of my soul dies.
This is the thing. I mean, it's an incredibly simple song on guitar. Anyway, it might be different on other instruments. What I liked about playing it, and I don't like the sound of the song. It's very sort of not my area of specialism, if you like. It's just straight up rock, which you'd think is mine, but it's I don't know. It's very simple, incredibly simple. There's no time spent looking at the fretboard.
Yeah.
You're focusing solely on the crowd, and that's what I enjoyed about that song.
Yeah.
But I'd say, in terms of musical content, that's probably, and I'm not getting on the soapbox or, I listen to music that's so much better than the folk that listen to that rubbish. It's a case of, it's not really my thing. It doesn't offend me. But obviously it has an effect on you, which is interesting.
I just don't know what it is. It might just be the inane chant of like the universal, like everyone can sing it like da 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 da. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe I just picture like football hooligan crowds just singing it, and
that very much the audience I feel for that kind of song.
It's just something that just I don't think I'll ever get over. I think I've got a disease with that song.
Yeah, I mean, I do know what you mean, but again, I agree with you. It's not something I'd sit at home and sort of start chilling out and then like, oh, what do I want to hear? Chelsea Dagger. That's what I want to hear right now. Da, 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 da. But I think it was very, in a way, you could look at it as a very cleverly written piece of music because it is catchy. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It's quite short.
Yeah.
Therefore, you know, it's easy. It's an earworm. It's easy to get in people's heads. You find yourself humming it. I mean, I can't say I have, but I'm sure it is one of those, you know, So again, there is obviously, coming on to our points eventually, there is there is some sort of genius and thought that's gone into writing that sort of song.
I think
because you can hum it, you remember it.
Yeah, and again, the effect it has on the crowds that we would play in France, you know,
Absolutely.
all those like bars and open bars and stuff, was like they would just go mental for it. They would absolutely love it. So I can't doubt the song's power, but like you said, any of the songs we play, typically or used to play, I never just want to hear them on my casual time. It's almost like I'm bringing work back home. Perfect segue into terms of like what we kind of want to talk about, you know. So
yes.
I don't want this to be a podcast where we're just slagging off albums and like, this album's rubbish. It's so poor. You can't do this. And this person's rubbish. It's like far from it. I think what we're going to do is each week we'll talk about a different angle of why an album might be considered bad or albums.
Yeah.
And pivot off of one and kind of stick up for them, kind of defend them. Because in my mind, there's no such thing as a bad album. I have yet to listen to any piece of music where I'm like, I physically can't anymore. This is the worst thing in the world. So kind of in a way, I kind of want people to kind of give me albums that I'm like, yep, that's the one, and can't be proved wrong. But I just feel like I don't know. I feel like I've listened to a lot of music, same as you, and I don't know. I feel like I'm good with it. So
okay,
I want to talk about new music first, things that we've been listening to, good or bad, just a general chit chat. So
okay.
Foo Fighters, Medicine at Midnight came out very recently. We both listened to it. Me being the bigger Foo Fighters fan out of the both of us.
Absolutely.
It's weird. I wouldn't say like I love them. They're like my top 10 favorite bands, but I've listened to every record they've done. I follow them. I have a big amount of respect for them, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm a Foo Fighters lover in denial, you know. But I think it's.
I don't think you're in denial somehow.
I think it's better than the last two records. I think it's just under Wasting Light in terms of how good it is.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair.
I think there's a lot more variety as well. It almost gets to like there's like Paramore sounding, like the self-titled era of Paramore, that kind of loud drumming, synthy openness is very Paramore. There's like a very John Mayer-esque song. The John Mayer song's called Helpless, and I think it's the same key as well. And similar solo, similar kind of sound. It's like it's almost like the Stevie Ray Vaughan 80s sound,
give it to me.
But like kind of modernized a little bit.
It's interesting because I know Foo Fighters. You're definitely the bigger fan. So it's nice for me as a very sort of metal and hard rock sort of centered musician, and that's sort of the stuff I go. They're my go-tos.
Yeah.
So yeah, my overall thoughts on new Foo Fighters. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. On first listen, there was nothing I could immediately remember, which is, I believe that's something me and you kind of have a gauge of, is in terms of like, not was it a good album, but can I remember this? You know, can I hum this? And there probably are plenty of songs on there like that. It's just I tend to listen to my albums when I'm doing something else, you know, unless it's an album I already inherently know. I mean, it kind of depends. But no, I was pleasantly surprised.
I don't know. There was a lot of experimentation on that album, Concrete and Gold, that to me, I didn't necessarily hear it. Whereas on Medicine at Midnight, I'm hearing more of it. The backing vocals with the female backing vocals, different guitar sounds, different drum sounds, drum loops, drum samples. Like, to me, it's way more eclectic.
Yeah.
And I really like Shame Shame, which seems to be the weakest track on the album. Everyone is saying, or it's a weak single, but I listened to it once when it came out on the audio, on like a YouTube audio video, and then an SNL performance, and then that was it. I could just remember everything, the whole structure, the melody, and like, I don't get that a lot, and that was one of those songs.
Yeah. But you still enjoyed it.
I still enjoyed it, Mez. Bleed now.
There we go. So again, that, despite the fact a lot of people were kind of saying, I don't really, I think this is the weakest track on the album. You still like it.
I still like it.
Again, there we go.
And that's the podcast, so.
And that's the perspective of the podcast.
Weezer, one of my favorite.
Weezer?
One of my favorite bands. Definitely the one that's made my favorite album of all time, Pinkerton. Cue all the Blue Album haters or the lovers, whatever. Oh, Blue Album's better. Oh. Whatever.
I mean, I will argue that to death, but
whatever.
I am a big fanboy of the Blue Album.
Oh,
so.
It is perfect power pop. But they released I think they surprise released an album called OK Human.
I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah. Well, let me drop some knowledge on you, boy. So
give me some knowledge. I want to hear it.
So they had Van Weezer coming out, which was like a heavy metal record for Weezer standards. Ended the game, sounded really, really good. Kind of what we would expect. But then they dropped this record, OK Human, and I didn't know that I wanted that from Weezer until I actually heard it. It's just piano and orchestra, recorded at Abbey Road. No electric guitar, some acoustic guitar in it. Oh, it's so very good. It's just so good. I think it's the best thing they've done since the White Album. I would even maybe push it higher than the White Album.
Wow.
It's just, it has emotion, it has feeling. He's talking about himself, which is, I guess, what any Weezer fan really wants.
Absolutely.
All my favourite songs, absolute tune. So if you haven't heard that single, go listen to it, Mez. And anybody else listening, you know what I'm saying? Your mum, my mum, both our mums. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I listened to it today. I want more of it.
That's fantastic. That's exactly what you want from an album.
Exactly.
You want more.
Exactly.
You want more.
Any other albums you've been listening to? Or tunes?
Yeah, I still drop into Lamb of God from time to time. Not necessarily just for albums, but for the odd song. And I gave their latest release, being last year, which was a self-titled album, Lamb of God, I gave that a re-listen. Now, initially, I found myself not underwhelmed, but kind of just my attitude towards it was, it's more Lamb of God, therefore it's welcome. But I gave it a re-listen, and I've got to say, it is fantastic. The way they've matured as a band is perfect. I think what they write now is not superior, but I think it's on par with some of their biggest tunes, definitely. I don't think they'll attain. I mean, there's always that argument of, Metallica will never release Master of Puppets again, and no, they won't. But that was a moment in time.
Exactly.
That was what they did then. And being a fan of the band, I don't think it's just about whether you like an album or not. To my mind, despite the fact that most of the bands I listen to have an enormous fan base, I think a lot of it is to do with, I would like to help sustain these band members. They have provided me a service, which is enjoying their music, and I would like to continue supporting them in their venture of producing that music. And that's, obviously, I know they're on a lot higher of a level than someone trying to break through. So my support may or may not be detriment to their production of another album. However, if everybody thought that, none of our favourite bands would be anywhere near where they are now.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I gave it another listen, and I am, like I said, very impressed. If you're into very heavy, fast music, I could not recommend it enough. And, I mean, any Lamb of God, dive into their discography. Dive into it, because you will love it. And if you don't, then that's just not going to happen. You'll love it. That's the beginning and end. You know?
You'll come round with an old sock and a bag of nickels.
Absolutely not.
See, like I said, that old sock and a bag of nickels rather than nickels in an old sock. So you'll have an old sock, I guess, to put on their nose so they pass out, and then give them a bag of nickels that they can't spend in England.
Where are you going with this?
No idea.
Where are you going?
No,
where are you going?
Absolutely no idea.
You're like 14-year-old Mez. You've got no direction right now.
Yeah, he circled that back.
I've come back to that.
So we asked ourselves, are there any CDs or albums that we've got in our collections that we think are terrible, or we think are bad? And I've definitely found one. I think you've definitely found one. I mean,
Yes, I do have one.
For you, like you said, you don't necessarily buy or keep albums that you don't like. Whereas for me, I like having it all. I don't know why. But the one I've got is called "Everything Is Wrong" by Moby. It came out. It came out, I believe, in 1995, which again is going to be a big central theme to this.
Yes, it
podcast.
is.
Yeah, it's very, very weird. I only bought this because there's one song called "God Moving Over the Face of the Waters," which I'd seen on a skate video called "Birdhouse the End." But yeah, and I remember listening to it. I think I've only listened to the album twice all the way through, and the last time I did, I think I was driving back from rehearsal, and I was just, it just dragged. It was just nothing just seemed to end, and the production was seemed really flat, and it was all over the place. It was like dance music, techno music, and then it'd be like some weird lo-fi industrial metal sounding music, and it was just kind of I didn't know what it was meant to be, like who it was trying to be. And then when I looked up reviews and things, it's like his most critically acclaimed album. People are like, it's amazing, it kickstarted all this. He's underwater. I'm showing you right now. Look.
Yep, I can see that. I can see
kind of looks like a monk because he's got orange t-shirt on and stuff. And yeah, in the liner notes as well, he's put all these like animal rights facts. Now I'm vegan myself.
He is.
So I agree with everything he's saying, and especially from 1995, that I guess it's a lot more of a stigma. I guess seemed to be more of a stigma to be vegan or plant-based living, or to not necessarily care about animals, but to be an animal rights activist. But yeah, I can already see people being switched off by it because of that liner notes. But then again, you would have bought the album, so you would have bought it, read it, and been like, ugh, and then got mad. But
what would you have been like?
You would have been like, ugh.
Nice.
So there you go. But yeah, it seems to be that this is a really, really good album. Everyone's saying this is a good one. So I'm going to listen to it all the next week. I'm going to do as much research as I can and find out the reasons why certain songs are why they are. And the more I invest in a group or an artist or songs, usually the better I find them. So maybe I'll quite like it. But, I mean, I like one song off of it. So is it a terrible album? Who knows? But that's just me. 1995. Anyway, to you, 1995 as well.
It is. It is indeed. So the only album, and as I said earlier, I am very, very kind about the bands I listen to. And I think being a musician as well, you can have that empathy to some degree in terms of recording an album and writing an album and contextual issues, etc., etc. So the only one I could dig out that it's not that I can't stand it, it's not that I hate it, it's got to be X Factor by Iron Maiden. And it's just not Iron Maiden to me, you know? And I mean, you'll get the same for a lot of Iron Maiden fans. If you're just getting into the band, you won't be listening to that. You will not be listening to that, you'll be going for the classics. However, for somebody who has gotten into Iron Maiden, who wants the complete discography, and I mean complete, then you will buy it, and you'll also probably buy the album after it. Now, contextually, obviously, there is a different singer to Bruce Dickinson. My opinion is that he was the wrong replacement at the wrong time. He should not have replaced Bruce Dickinson. Now, that's not to say he's a bad singer, because he is definitely not a bad singer. He's a great singer in his own right. However, he cannot sing Iron Maiden classics, it seems. This album, one or two songs are a bit like a diamond in the rough, a bit like you were saying with Moby. Yeah. However, most of it was recorded in Steve's barn, which was a studio at the time. They had an unusual producer, a guy called Nigel Green, and at the time they were using just not people who they weren't used to. So, I mean, Martin Birch was a big name for Maiden in terms of production. Yeah. And yeah, it just sounds weird. It's almost like they became a parody of themselves around that time. And speaking as the 15-year-old Mez who adored Iron Maiden, I'm so happy they came back around and came back with Brave New World, because that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. But yeah, it outstays its welcome. It's nowhere near as hooky. The sound is unusual. The guitars in places sound a bit weird to me. Yeah, it's just not Iron Maiden, and that's why a lot of people tend to disregard it completely. Completely. I don't disregard it. It happened. Deal with it. And the way I deal with it is the CD, which I don't have to hand, but you are aware of the cover. You know what it looks like. Even in the artwork, would you agree with me if I said they took an unusual direction compared to what they'd done before?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's not Eddie, is it? The other one.
It is Eddie. It's Eddie, but it's just a very different iteration.
Sorry, I was thinking of Virtual 11. Is that right?
And 9, I do believe, is the album after that, which is also Eddie.
Oh, I thought that wasn't. Yeah, it's a lot more real to me. It looks more
it's
real,
like computer generated.
Yeah,
isn't
and he's
it?
kind of like in like a electric chair of sorts, and he's got his.
It's very weird.
His scalp's coming off, and it's like he's holding onto a jetpack. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I don't know.
Very
almost
strange.
In a way, like it's like they were trying to. You could tell the kind of grunge, industrial, new metal thing had kind of come in. They were trying to fit in with stuff, but I found the drums to be that they sounded a lot different on that record, and
they did.
The hooks are just like someone like Falling Down. He's just singing Falling Down like about 20 times.
Man on the Edge.
Yeah. I feel like that's a very repeat offender on that whole album.
And I believe Man on the Edge is the single for that album. So for guys listening at home or wherever you are, go and listen to Man on the Edge and you'll understand exactly what we mean. Whereas before they had The Trooper, they had Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills. You've got Man on the Edge. And at that time, sorry Steve, but at that time, if that's the single you're putting out, I don't want the album. But again, slightly contradicting myself there. I don't have anything against it. It doesn't offend me. It's just not really Maiden. But they were going through a difficult time. They lost 2 incredibly big factors in terms of their songwriting, their live performances. Adrian Smith left a few albums before, replaced by the incredible Yannick Years. Very, very, very good guitarist. And they soldiered on, and I respect that. And I do own the album. I do own a physical copy. It does not get played often, as you can well imagine.
Well, it will get played all next week then. So I think what we should do is our little homework. I think we can either watch documentaries, get a lot more research into it, and hopefully next week we'll do a little bit of a shorter segment and go, yeah, you know what? Ain't as bad as I thought. Or we're going to go, nope, it's still exactly the same thing. And then the whole podcast is just pointless because we hate that album. But there you go. That's life. Sue me, eh? Sue me. Let's actually get into the kind of episode what we're going to talk about. So we're going to center it around Saint Anger, which is Metallica's.
Yes.
I don't know what number album it is. It came out in 2003. And
it did indeed.
It went number 1 as it would because it's Metallica.
Biggest metal band in the
world. And universally, apart from Lulu, which I don't count as a Metallica album, but as...
No, it's a collaboration.
Yeah, as traditional Metallica albums, that's always rated the worst. Everyone can't stand it. All the snares terrible and just everything. Oh, the singing's bad and you can't hear the bass and no guitar solos and all the mess. But
absolutely.
I don't think it's as bad as people think it is, especially now looking back at it like 18 years later.
Do you know? Interesting. So me and Marv were discussing this episode, what we were going to do, what we were going to discuss. And Saint Anger was a big theme around that. Now, it's a very interesting album for a number of reasons. Obviously, they lost longtime bassist Jason Newsted. obviously James Hetfield was going through a lot of issues in terms of substance abuse and addiction. And I mean, come on, like Marv, imagine being the biggest metal band in the world in 2003. Yeah. What a weird place to be. What a weird place to be. Now, I had a discussion with another friend of mine the weekend, and his opinion on it was, I don't hate it, but it's just not for me. I don't listen to it. And his reasoning was because of new metal, because of metalcore and everything else that was coming to light at that time. They were trying to evolve like every other band tries to within that era. However, he thinks they tried to evolve too quickly.
Okay.
Now, I kind of get where he's coming from there, but me and you, we know the reasons why this album came out and about like it did. A songwriting technique they've never ever tried. And when you're the biggest metal band in the world, people love you for one thing and one alone, that's a bit of a bold jump.
Definitely. And I think not the problem with Metallica, but the big thing with Metallica is that, you know, I would say each one of their albums is completely different. Maybe apart from Load and Reload. Yep. I mean, there are some quieter moments in Reload, but then Mama Said, which is off of Load, is like basically a country song. I think it's great. So I think especially with a band like Metallica, I lump them in with the Beatles, even Smashing Pumpkins, where people stop at a certain era, that their favorite era is this. So, you know, Master of Puppets backwards, or they stop at And Justice for All, or they stop at the Black Album, and then people say the Black Album's terrible. And I'm like, well, I understand that if you're a metal purist and, you know, you just want fast, hard music, that's not where to get it. Yeah. But you can't deny the Black Album changed music and changed how metal was perceived just forever. And then Load and Reload, kind of MTV, they had to get through that alternative grunge phase, which I feel like they survived, whereas a lot of other bands didn't. Bon Jovi kind of scraped through, I'd say. Warren,
they got through.
Warren didn't, you know. Motley Crue kind of failed, but that's because their lead singer left. But yeah, and, you know, and then they had this big long gap where it was like, right, they've done Reload in 1997, which was kind of like an offshoots album from the sessions of Load. Then they did S&M, which I know you can't stand, and I don't mind it, but I think it just gets a bit cluttered sometimes. I like the ambition of it. Yeah.
To me, S&M, so I don't want to bang on about this, but 16-year-old Mez, I even had the T-shirt, Master of Puppets, with the album listing on the back. I was obsessed. I said about Enter Sandman, you dig a little bit deeper. Oh, Metallica, Master of Puppets. That is where it becomes. I also had a period of time where I tried to argue you down when I was saying Ride the Lightning was better. Interesting, just not the case, let's be honest. They're both fantastic albums.
Very good albums.
And that leap from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning got to be one of the biggest leaps in terms of first to second album.
In every single category. Every single category,
yeah. Absolutely. But, so to me, S&M, again, 16-year-old Mez, well into Master of Puppets. It's heavy, it's fast. So I was a little bit purist at that point. But when you're in your early teens, you don't really perceive things as you should in a lot of ways. And then I heard S&M. Master of Puppets does not need an orchestra. It's just not needed. It's not necessary. And to my mind, I think we had this discussion with Bruno, an old flatmate of ours, and he agreed with us. The orchestration is bad. Like, it is, to me, it's not well written. I mean, I'm not an orchestral expert. I do not play in orchestras. I very rarely listen to that sort of music. But it's supposed to add to the songs that already exist. And to my mind, all it does is take away from them. That's all it does to me. And, you know, there's probably, in fact, I know for an absolute fact, it's a very, very popular record. And when they did S&M 2, again, popular again.
Number one, yeah.
Exactly. I can no, it's another one of those X Factor albums for me. I just can't come to grips with it, so maybe I could give that a re-listen this week.
Yeah, you could
well.
load your plate with two albums, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it doesn't excite me. It doesn't leave me wanting more. It doesn't. However, all this said, No Leaf Clover, love it. Absolutely love it. But I think that is simply because that's not on Master of Puppets. That's not like super fast. That's not. So was it written for S&M?
Yeah, you had Minus Human, you had No Leaf Clover. There were two songs written specifically for S&M. Which and then if you look at the lineage there, then so I think Minus Human is in C standard or drop C, and then
like
I
that.
Disappear has the snare switched off at the back or turned off at the back.
Okay.
Or snare turned off. That's the right term. Come on.
Just turn it off, mate.
You put
turn
them two together, and that's Saint Anger. You know,
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
if you listen to I Disappear now, you'll realize the snare's been clicked off, and you're like, oh, that's Saint Anger. But how come? I think it's just because it's there all the time, and he's playing the snare like constantly.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. No Leaf Clover. I do like that song. I am a big fan of that song. But the rest of it, I'm going to leave it. I think we normally say I could take or leave it. No, I'm going to leave it. But no, and I'll tell you what, I will at some point give it a re-listen because as we've already said, I don't like it. But that doesn't necessarily mean to say it's a bad album. What makes a bad album?
Well, I mean, that's the whole point. What we're doing here, we'll talk about it. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think there's so many other factors. I think, again, with music, it's so personal, it's so subjective, and you don't want to risk offending anybody. You don't want to say this one's crap, this one's rubbish, but it can literally be from anything. So. Yeah, I think the whole point of using Saint Anger as well is like, we want to talk about like band member changes. How does a member of a band really affect how a band's work is perceived? There's so many different reasons why someone might leave, and who they are and what they contribute to the band. So with Jason Newsted leaving, who was the bass player, and this was 2001. He wrote, had 4 writing credits. Yeah, Blackened.
He didn't have a lot.
Yeah, Blackened. Yeah, My Friend in Misery.
Didn't he also have the riff for Through the Never? Was that him?
I'm not sure. I don't think that was him.
Okay.
But we can always check that. But yeah, I mean, not contributing to the songwriting in terms of majority, like he's expendable in that regard. If you've got Hammett, you've got Hetfield and Ulrich in that regard. I mean, he took over from Cliff, who unfortunately passed away, and to me does a great job and came into his own, especially live. Like he's a very big presence live. We'd love watching the YouTube videos, especially on Creeping Death. Oh my god, like he is sweating. He's it's so good. It's so good.
He really. I'll tell you what. There's a particular live performance. You already know the one I'm talking about, where they're playing Creeping Death, and he uses an expletive, which I will not use here.
We'll try and be clean this episode.
It's a family-friendly show. But he's on the backing vocals during the bridge or the breakdown, whatever you want to call it, going, day, and he's really putting 110% into that. As much as we've sat and absolutely wetted ourselves at that video, he's so much dedication to that, and he's playing the parts and he's playing them well. So I mean, speaking as professional musicians, what more do you really want? I think it's a little bit unfair, some of the things in terms of all of them took the mick out of him and constantly ragged on him for not being Cliff. Yeah. I think that's very, very unfair. And I think Jason could have been treated the way he was, obviously because he wasn't Cliff, but could there have been a songwriting element in there as well? As we said, he only had 4 credits. I mean, could that have been part of the thing? Because as we know, a band can never be a democracy. It's got to be pulled by someone. And imagine filling the shoes of someone like Cliff Burton. Imagine trying to fill the shoes of somebody like that as a musician and as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, he was a huge impact on them in terms of they all looked up to him. He got them onto like things like Simon and Garfunkel and non-metal music. He wrote a lot of the harmonies. He's a very unique bass player, you know, very recognizable.
Incredibly.
So I think maybe part of the hazing was, but, you know, when you're in your mid-20s, 23, 24, 25, and that happens, such a terrible accident happens, you're not going to be emotionally ready for it. And
no, definitely
they just wanted
not.
to keep on working and just block that out. And Jason was the scapegoat, really. But you see now, and all of these arguments and discussions about, you know, Jason was so good and I grew up with him and Rob's rubbish, and even people saying Cliff's rubbish, Jason's the best. And it's like, it's just interesting to me that someone who I guess wasn't that pivotal in terms of how the albums necessarily turned out. I think if you remove Jason from, say, the songwriting or from the record, let those other three people make it and he comes in and plays, I think you'd relatively get the same outcome. So for him to have not so much of as an important role to then leave, and as we see on the Some Kind of Monster documentary, all the crap that just funnels out and they just go down to about 2 members and they don't know what to do. And the rug's been pulled out from underneath them from the bass player who was allowed to write 4 songs, you know?
Exactly that. And I mean, I have a little quote here that James Hetfield said, and the exact quote is, you know, the Black Album tour, that was the album of multiple divorces, lots of egos, you know, swollen to. He called it, no one was right-sized anymore. And when you're in a band that big and your reach is that large, it's no surprise. And I mean, what these guys were in their late 20s when they were recording the Black Album? Is that right?
I want to say they were like between 29 and 31. I think Lars was 29, maybe Hetfield was about 30, 31.
Yeah, I mean, considering everything they did, like, I imagine their egos were quite large. Would you say their egos were still quite large when they got to Saint Anger?
Oh,
because that must
incredibly. But again, you know, imagine being famous in your early 20s up until you're 40 and up until now, you know, and everything you're achieving and smashing all these records and number 1 all the time, and you're the biggest metal band. It has to go to your head. There's no way that you can be prepared for that, you know. And we're only watching it, so who the hell knows what it's like actually being in that?
Well, yeah, exactly. And my point was going to be that you know, imagine having an ego that big. You're untouchable, and you know, I know Hetfield experiencing substance addiction at the time, and they were trying all these new songwriting techniques that were alien to them. But imagine being that large in your own head, and all of a sudden the bass player that, you know, you kind of been taking the mickey out for years, you don't really appreciate him as an individual or a musician, all of a sudden he goes and everything goes with it in that moment. I mean, that famous scene in the Some Kind of Monster movie where Lars is showing his dad what they've done, and he basically tells them to delete it. Like, that must have absolutely crushed that dude. It must have absolutely crushed him, because as far as I'm aware, Lars' dad is like an absolute staple of support for Lars, and he listens to everything they do before it goes out. He gives an opinion, and it's accepted. It's appreciated. They want to hear it. So I know I appreciate. You know, Jason's gone. Hetfield's in rehab at this point. So it must be pretty difficult as it is to lose like your right-hand man when it comes to songwriting. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, your dad turns around and says, "This is crap. This is crap. You don't want this. You don't want to release this." So Yeah, I mean, from what I got from the Hetfield interview was very much a case of all he wanted right from a very young age was to strive for success. Mentioning he's leaving friends behind to play with better musicians, and maybe he tried to apply the same way of thinking with Jason. Like, okay, well, if he don't want to be in it, that's fine. Off he goes, and it completely turned their world upside down. However, they were landed with Rob, who I think is absolutely superb.
Absolutely phenomenal bass player.
Amazing bassist. Amazing. And he seems like a really great guy. I mean, I don't know, Rob, come to Bristol, mate. Let's have a coffee. Let's discuss it, mate. I want to hear your side. Do you know what I mean?
Rob, are you really a great guy? That's what you'd say.
Yeah, I want to know. I want to find out, mate.
So, yeah, like, you know, I think Hetfield's thing was about control. He said that a lot in interviews, that, you know, you squeeze things that you love until they, you know, die. But it was that whole Echo Brain thing. Jason Newsted had that side project, and
yeah,
you know, he said this in interviews. It's going really well, and Metallica's management were very interested and were like, "We'll support this. The singer's great, whatever." Hetfield hears about it, not happy about it. A couple of days later, Jason gets a phone call. Yeah, we're not going to support it. Just like, that's interesting. And I think on the day they were recording the classic albums series, the Black Album, which I think was recorded on the same day of like Cliff Burton's anniversary of his death.
Mad.
Jason Newsted says he's quitting. So he quits on the same day the bass player had died. I don't know whether that's like a little kind of like backstab move on his part, but I think he told Kurt first. And James Hetfield's response was, because he was talking about Echo Brain, James Hetfield was like, other arrangements can be made. So what I would imply by that is that he can just be replaced. But again, when you're in that vacuum of a band and you're in your early 20s and everything's good and that's all you're doing, you're putting things like your mental health aside, like Jason Newsted says. Like, he met Phil Toll, by the way. He was like, he met the dude, you know, and he's having meetings, and, you know, Hetfield's drinking big tall boys in the morning, and he was on pain pills because of his shoulder, and, you know, management apparently had come in, and he'd already said he'd quit by this point, and apparently he was crying like for like, I don't know, 7-8 hours on the floor, and like Lars is all freaking out. Management come in and they're going, what's going on? They're like, oh, you know, see what's going on. And they just start handing out papers like normal, like, right, so you got MTV on here, you got this on this on this. Apparently Lars was like, do you see what's going on? Like, can you see our band just depleting? And they're like, yep. And they're just carrying on as normal. Just madness, you know.
It is crazy, and obviously with the pressures of being in a band that big, having to sell records, having to meet your quota, under normal circumstances for two people like James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich, not a problem. Not a problem, as we've seen many times before. But again, this is part of our point. Context and perspective. Some Kind of Monster, you can see the strained relationships going on with the arguments between James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. And the pressure of being the biggest band in the world trying to go through a transition is only going to add to that. And obviously, James, as I think this is the third time I've said now, substance addiction. Kirk, I don't really think writes a whole load of things anymore, and I don't think he really did in 2002, 2003 for Saint Anger. And you're without a bassist, you don't have one. And you get the producer who was with you when you did potentially the biggest metal album of all time. The biggest selling.
One of the biggest albums of all time too.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And I could see the thought process with that. Well, if we get the producer that we had on the Black Album, then, you know, we'll get into a room, we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I actually didn't know about the 7-8 hours screaming on the floor, the label going, get on with it, come on, let's have this, let's be having you. I didn't know all about that, so that's a scary bit of information there. But it's what happens in the music industry, isn't it?
Yeah, again, you know, They just view songs as product, and they want to get stuff out and let's keep things moving. And that's why they got the therapist in, and they got through it. They made Death Magnetic, which to me is like a response to the fans being like, look, we're fine. To me, I'm not a big fan of that album. I still think it's good, but I much prefer...
Yeah.
I think I'd even prefer Hardwired to Self-Destruct,
I do
for as long as it is, a little bit bloated in places, but I much prefer it. I can get past the snare sound now. That doesn't bother me. I like the singing. I like the whole fact that it is a little bit pitchy in places, and it's very emotive. It's one of their most emotive sounding records. It's their angriest sounding record. I think Frantic is amazing. I like Saint Anger, Some Kind of Monster. Again, I think the first 5 songs, pretty solid. If you don't want to listen to the whole thing, just go for the first 5 songs. Frantic to Invisible Kid. And I think when you get into like My World, Shoot Me Again, pretty filler, Sweet Amber, Unnamed Feeling is pretty good. I think that was a single. Purify, I think, is the hardest one to listen to.
Yeah, I got that. I did get that. Yeah, I know what you mean. But no, I'm sorry, go on.
It's all right. You go ahead, boy.
Oh, okay. So I'm in the same boat. So Frantic, great. I love that. Ironically, I was going to say I love the franticness of it.
See, I like what you did there. That's clever.
Yes.
That's clever journalism at its heart.
Clever journalism. Yeah. So I enjoy Frantic. Saint Anger, now, the classic. I think most of the reason why this album is hated on is not necessarily to do with the musical content, but it is at the same time. I think it's very cool, or it was at the time, to hate Metallica. Yeah. All these new bands are emerging, all these new genres are having the sort of base being built for them, and they're going to exist for the next sort of 20, 30 years. They still exist now, a lot of them. It's easy to just go, oh, they're old, they're tired, But Saint Anger as a song, I'm going to tell you right now, Marv, do you know the only thing I don't like about Saint Anger?
That?
The song. The only thing I don't like is the fact that they do a re-intro at the very end that is exactly the same length as the intro. I think it overstays its welcome a little bit. Other than that, I think it's an absolutely class Metallica song.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, given the circumstances and the context of everything going on, it's a miracle those dudes got an album out at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, Saint Anger, it could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse.
Oh,
as consumers,
go on.
As fans, you don't think that, do you? You think, what is this? I've invested in this, and now I have to listen to it because I've invested in it.
I think a general consensus maybe is that you just want your favorite band to keep doing a better album every single album for the rest of their lives. And you just realize that that's an impossible target to set on anybody. So you just have to, like the Weezer one I was saying earlier, OK Human, like just wait until you get it, listen to it, experience it, and then make your judgment maybe. And then just go, well, just if you want Master of Puppets, go listen to Master of Puppets. It's fine. This is just like a snapshot in their life. And again, like things around that time. So White Stripes Elephant came out. Permission to Land the Darkness came out. Linkin Park Meteora. Speakerbox Love Below Outcast. Fever to Tell by Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Mars Volta, Delouse in the Crematorium. So, a lot of new metal was, I would say, still popular. Maybe it was starting to die off now, 2003, 2004. And to me, it sounds current in that time period.
Definitely.
I think it sounds dated, but I don't mind that.
No.
But it was that, for me, it was that and Ride the Lightning that were the 2 albums that I heard first for Metallica.
Wow.
So very, very different, and a long gap of 19 years or something.
Definitely.
So to me, I guess I had less of a shock with it. I remember when it came out. Again, I remember watching the film when it came out, or roundabout that way. So to me, I don't think it's their worst thing they've ever done. I just think if it was shortened a little bit, it would be a better album. And
Absolutely.
again, seen them live at Lancaster in 2019, and they played Frantic, and to me it was really good. Like, you could feel it. Played really well, sung really well, little mini solo in there, and that was my favorite one off of that record anyway, so I enjoyed it. And my mate Jake was like, oh no, a Saint Anger song. And I was like, dude, it's banging, shut up. Nah, he's cool.
This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, what I like about Metallica now, I saw a live performance on YouTube. I think it was in Europe somewhere, and it was very, very current, like the last 3 years. And they played Saint Anger. They played the song. And do you know what? Despite the fact everyone's like, well, two things. One, despite the fact the fans always go, oh, Saint Anger, oh, like your mate Jake, our mate Jake. He's my mate as well. Despite that, it's like making a point and sticking by it. You know, they've released that. They accept not everyone likes it, but you know, not everyone wants to hear the same set list a million times. And point number 2, the crowd were going mental. So, I'll let you be the judge. Who's right? You know, who's right? That dude down the pub who goes, nah, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, kill 'em all, that's it, yeah. You don't want to look at Saint Anger. Or, you in the moment, when you hear Frantic and go, this is banging. Who's right? I'll tell you who. Everyone's right, because that's the whole point of music. It's a discussion. It's up for discussion. It's art, it is expression, and it is to everyone's taste, whatever you fancy.
Again, and to me, it was them being honest in their songwriting and their lyrics. Like, to me, I'm very attracted to that. So I guess relate to an emotional level. To me, it's not lifeless. It's actually very lively, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I'm a big fan.
Definitely. He's writing what he feels, like you just said. He's writing what he feels. It's emotive. You can relate to it.
Exactly. And for them to even make an album was like exceptional. Think about, you know, your bass player's gone, your lead singer's gone to rehab. He's come back a different person. I think they're going for
4 hours a day.
4 hours a day to work. Can't listen to the music before or after. Divorces and getting off of drugs, and then trying to keep up, trying to stay relevant, trying to keep up, experiment with new tunings, jamming together, which they didn't really even do until that record. Like, actually trying to make songs on the spot. You know, pretty good going, I would say. You know, pretty good going.
Not bad. And I don't know if they've done it since, but like you say, considering everything, it's not as bad an album as I remember, or as most people remember. I think you'll be delightfully surprised.
Definitely. I think go listen to it again and really focus, I would say, on the emotiveness about it. And if, again, first 5 tracks, even just do the first 5 tracks for me. Go for that.
That's enough. Exactly. The others are kind of like B-sides.
I would just say it's better than you remember it.
Yes, absolutely. Better than you remember it. Lead with that line.
There we go. In sync we are, eh? Bleed now.
In sync. Wavelengths. Same page, same library, same postcode. It's all good.
See, that sounds like an Office quote, but I know it's not.
Oh, it's definitely not. It's all good, baby.
Different bands for different podcasts.
Listeners.
Oh, we went there. Drunkard. After that, that's 2 in 1. Anyways, I found a good... David Lee Roth was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said a really good thing about... He was discussing about the Sammy Hagar era, how that was different, and I'll read this to you now. Do a little segment, make it all sound fancy.
Read it to me. I want to hear it.
David Lee Roth. Are some bands like West Side Story, where you can continually revitalize the production with different actors? You can't change the voices, but you can change the story. One of my favorite freeze-dried bands in history is Toto. So what he's saying there is that all freeze-dried coffee looks the same, and it's great. Any of the fellas could walk up to me, and I wouldn't recognize them. Then there are artists that you just can't replace. Rod Stewart. His songs, you could have other people sing them, but it becomes something other.
Yeah.
Now, Journey. I would recognize the guitar player, but that's because I listened to that part of the band. Steve Perry was not so much a personality as an eloquent sound. It was a universal sound, and if you even get close to it, it's a part of every prom and wedding. Even Tony Soprano. We don't know what happened, but it happened to Journey. That's very significant. You can't play a David Lee Roth song and worry about Tony Soprano.
Yeah. Okay.
So I quite like what he's saying in terms of, I think I'm pretty sure Toto has a different lead singer now, but everyone could leave that band apart from Steve Lukather. And to me, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't bother me in my world. I think Steve Lukather maybe needs to be the constant, but maybe even then, they've got the hits. I think it doesn't matter who the hell's in Toto.
I think you're correct. The charm with Toto, to my mind, is really good rock-based sort of pop music that is written and played extremely well by some absolutely incredible musicians. Now,
get that cough in, lad. Get that cough
sorry.
in.
Name me one guy that could replace Steve Lukather now.
Oh, I can't. I just think I think the way he plays is amazing. I think he's just very unique as a player. I mean, people can replicate that, but I just think you need Steve Lukather there.
It's going to sound like a parody. It will sound like a cover band without him, I think.
Yeah, but again, if most of the band is gone, even the lead singer's changed, are you in fact watching a tribute band? Are you watching a cover band with just, one or two original members? Where's the line?
I think that comes down to whether you're looking at it from the perspective of who owns the name Toto, or you're looking at it from the perspective and the point you just made. If most of the members are gone, who am I watching? Am I watching Steve Lukather and Friends, or am I watching Toto?
Very true, very true.
I have no issue with Toto. I love Steve Lukather. You carry on what you're doing, buddy. And that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you very much. I've been James Merritt.
A loving send-off to Steve Lukather there. Great.
Indeed.
But yeah, so we kind of looked at... I kind of went into a deep dive of trying to find a band with the most member changes. The most I've seen were... They're called a rock band called Blood, Sweat and Tears, formed in 1968. There have been over 100 members.
That's absolutely
so
unbelievable.
7 of the original 8 members were gone by 1974, so that's 6 years.
Jesus.
The 8th drummer stopped playing with the band in 1977, but he owns the name and he's the musical director now of the band.
Oh, wow.
And the only constant member was the lead singer, and he joined during the second album, and he was kind of floating in and out, and now he's left for good in 2004. So,
right.
Is that even a band? 100 people have gone through, not lineups, 100 people.
Again, that to me is kind of your dedication. The point I made earlier about supporting the individuals who are producing the music that you want to listen to. You can't really gain much of a connection if you've already seen 100 of them, can you? So I feel like, I mean, I'll be completely honest to come out and say I have never ever heard of them.
Nor have I.
But that to me is like, you've got to have some pretty strong hits, and you've got to have some people who are just kind of not really that invested in you at all as a band, as a bunch of personalities. They're just kind of there for the ride, like a cover band.
Exactly.
Like a function band.
Exactly.
That's kind of how I see that. 100 members, though. Jesus Christ.
I mean, I don't know how you even keep count. I don't know. What's that down to? Like, creative differences, people dropping in and out, like... It just blows my mind. But
there's got to be a lot of... I don't know, because I was going to say there's got to be a lot of tension, but if the only real member was... I mean, did the singer have complete control over who was coming in and out? And he kind of just don't like you, or was it?
Literally no idea. I mean, I don't know much about the band. I never heard them until I looked them up. No. So it might be the case. I mean, there's definitely instances where people haven't got along with, like, it's one person kind of spearheading the band and they haven't got along with them, and that's where they churn out loads and loads of different things.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it kind of goes down to, I don't know, if you own the name, it's kind of a bit of a different thing. So like Sugar Babes, right? Nowhere near as many members as 100. So they start off with 3.
No.
And then I think by 2012, by 2009, actually, there was no original members left. So all 3 of them had left by that point. 3 completely new people.
Okay.
And then in 2012, the original members all reunite, but they don't own the name. So they go under Moita, Kesha, Siobhan.
Weird.
So it's like, oh, you're Sugar Babes. Yeah, but we're not. Yeah, but you are, though. Yeah, but we haven't got the name, so you can't really call us that. And I think they were still playing Sugar Babe songs, so very strange. But I think 2015, Kesha secures the rights to the American trademark.
Okay.
But they performed on UK TV shows as Sugar Babes, so I don't know whether in the intervening years since they managed to get that, because I think not the original Sugar Babes, but the Sugar Babes by name, who were the 3 replacements, they were inactive. So maybe just in due course, because it had been stopped, maybe they got it back. But they've been promising a new album since 2012, the original lineup, and it's been put on hold.
Wow.
But, so like, I kind of had to look into this, because I think I've seen something about the Marvelettes. I don't know if this is a thing for all Motown groups of that era, where, Motown owns their name, maybe owns their likeness. We've seen it with the Jackson 5 or Jackson 5. That they had to take the "the" out.
Okay.
And there was a point apparently where someone had procured the name the Marvelettes, and it was completely random people, all new people, going around as the Marvelettes. And I think the original Marvelettes were annoyed because it was taking away their business. So they took them to court, and this Truth in Music Advertising Act got built up. Basically what it's saying is that you have to have, registered the name, and that at least one member of the performing group is a member of, by right, it has to have one original member in it, or one member of the group.
Okay.
For like live music, because it goes under false advertising. And of course. And the penalty is between $5,000 and $15,000.
Wow.
But it's not. This is only in America, and not all states have agreed to this. So in certain states, I guess, if you bought the name Lynyrd Skynyrd, we could just all get a ragtag group of gals and boys and get on down, and we can be Lynyrd Skynyrd and play awful, exactly, play awful versions of their songs, and people be like, well, we're Lynyrd Skynyrd. But
Lynyrd Skin the cat.
Exactly. But that makes that interesting for when you look at, you look at other bands, like, for me, I picked Black Sabbath for this, and we're gonna choose their 1995 album, because again, for some reason, 1995 is all there. Forbidden.
Now,
Tony Iommi, not a big fan of this album.
No.
I don't know whether his mind's changed or not, because he seems to. I think there might be a re-release coming, and I think he's been like, actually there were some good bits on it and all these things, and he's not wrong. There are some good bits on it. I don't think it's as terrible as an album as everyone thinks it is, but I think having that legacy of Black Sabbath and what it was, and you compare it to Forbidden, it's just night and day. It's night and day,
Yeah, yeah.
So again, both of us love Black Sabbath.
Absolutely.
I mean, everything's been said about them,
Yep.
What more could we say about them? But
not really.
They've had 10 iterations. They've had 10 different lineups. If you look at the studio albums only, way more if you look at live and bits in between. The only constant is Tony Iommi.
Yeah.
And the only 2 times they had the same lineup after the Aussie era was for Mob Rules and Dehumanizer, which was an 11-year gap. So that was Dio, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Vinny Appice on drums, or Appice. Don't know how to say his name without it sounding like I'm just saying piss. I'm going to call him Vinny. Vinny A. And
Vinster.
The Vinster. And Jeff Nichols, who was like a long time touring member, keyboard and guitar.
Yep.
Both really, really good records, Mob Rules and Dehumanizer. Up there.
I love Mob Rules so much.
So good, so good. And then you have Tear and Forbidden, which was a 5-year gap. So that was Tony Martin, Tony Iommi, Neil Murray, Cozy Powell, and Jeff Nichols again. So the only constants there are Iommi and Jeff Nichols.
Yep.
But a drastically different band with not a drastically different sound, but in terms of critical appeal, people want to see them, monetary appeal, all these things, vastly different. I was going to pick Born Again with Ian Gillan, but the problem with that album is that it just sounds like Deep Purple and Black Sabbath put together. He's too much of a personality.
Yeah. This is what I mean. So when I first heard about that, Ian Gillan with Black Sabbath, to me, I don't know. I feel like I want to say something along the lines of they're from the same slice of bread, but two different ends. If you see what I mean, they're the same. They're a slice of the same loaf of bread, but from two different ends. To me, Ian Gillan, as you just said, is Deep Purple. That's who he is. Yep. So, I mean, obviously, Iommi, very similar as the whole Steve Harris, James Hetfield thing. You want to keep your band alive. You want to stay current. You want to put something out. Oh, everything's okay. Yeah, everything's fine. Here's the new album. Go and listen to it. Anyway, Marv, take the helm, my man.
So yeah, Ian Gillan was like, I was the worst singer Sabbath have ever had. I'm totally incompatible with any music they've ever done. That spawned the Stonehenge parody in Spinal Tap. They even posed with Spinal Tap and didn't realise.
That's amazing.
They just thought it was some sort of new band. I like Zero the Hero. I grew up with the best of Black Sabbath, which I think came out 2000.
I've got that somewhere, yeah.
And I didn't realise these are all different singers when I first heard it. Okay. So I must have been about 11, probably something like that. But I like Zero the Hero, and it's just Paradise City. You listen to Paradise City and you listen to Zero the Hero, the vocal phrasing's the same. The riff is very similar. It might even be the same key, But yes, so that ain't the worst one. I think Forbidden, I mean, a quick kind of thing of Black Sabbath. So, they have the Ozzy era, amazing. Then have problems with Ozzy, probably about technical ecstasy time. And then he leaves. And then Never Say Die comes out, very underwhelming record. Ozzy then leaves, he rejoins, then leaves again. They get Dio, they do 2 really, really good albums, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. Up there with the Ozzy stuff. Dio then leaves, and then we start getting this kind of pattern. So then Ian Gillan comes in for Born Again, then he leaves, and then Tony Iommi tries to do this solo record with different singers, but the record label are like, not going to sell as much, should put it as Black Sabbath. So you have this weird thing, it's Seventh Star, but it's Black Sabbath featuring Tony Iommi, and it's the oddest kind of thing in their canon of just, that makes no sense. But pretty solid album. If you remove the Black Sabbath name, really good 80s metal kind of sounding album. I think No Stranger to...
Can I ask,
Go on.
Sorry, did that album tour?
Yeah.
It did. Who did he use live?
I think he had Glenn Hughes.
Okay.
Who recorded the album, but then I think according to Iommi, did 10 times as much coke as he did, and he just imploded. Jesus. I think they might have kicked him off the tour, and that's when they got maybe Ray Gillan in.
Okay, yeah.
Then they go to record another album, Eternal Idol. Ray Gillan does the vocals, and then they have a bust up. He leaves. They get Tony Martin in, who records. The vocals already been recorded, so he re-records them note for note. Goes on tour. He becomes like the saving grace, basically.
Yeah.
Do you know who the second longest serving singer is in Black Sabbath?
Now, you did tell me this.
After Ozzy?
I do get the feeling it's Tony Martin, but I feel like you're going to shoot me down in flames.
I can't shoot you down because you're correct. It's Tony Martin. Collectively 8 years with the band. So,
yeah, definitely.
And Iommi just seems to like dump him every time. Every time something better comes along, he dumps Tony Martin, gets to someone else, that implodes, and he goes back. And Tony Martin always grabs at the carrot. So
yeah,
they then do Tear, they do Headless Cross. I think they do Cross Purposes. Yeah. They have these good run of albums, which people are selling pretty well and gaining up some momentum, but. Then you have stuff like Dehumanizer to 1992. Dio comes back. They have the same lineup as Mob Rules. Does really, really well. And then you have this weird thing where they get asked to support Ozzy on his, I think it was like his retirement tour at the time. Dio goes, I ain't supporting a clown. Leaves on the day of the gig. Rob Halford has to come in and do 2 gigs. So right. He's lead singer for a bit. And this happens again, I think, in 2004. For Rob Halford. They do those gigs, and then so this is like the original lineup, I assume, or with Vinny Appice. Did it again. Drop him, get Tony Martin back, and do Forbidden. Now, the big thing about Forbidden is that they got Ernie C from Body Count to produce. Now, Body Count is Ice-T's like rap, heavy metal,
it is, yeah,
crossover group.
I've seen them live.
Have you? When?
I saw them at, I believe it was Download. But I've definitely seen them live. And do you know what? Really good live. They were when I saw them.
Nice.
I was really impressed because at the time, young metalhead Mez, oh, what's this? No, we can't have this hip-hop rubbish at a metal festival. What's this? Really impressed, mate. I was like, this is class. This works really well, and I don't know why, but it does. Anyway, please continue, Marv. I keep interrupting.
It's completely fine. I do the same. So I think the biggest bane for everybody is that Ice-T raps on the song Illusion of Power. Which, again, if we've got our demographic of people who like Iron Maiden and like Black Sabbath and all those bands of that era, I don't want no rapping on my songs.
Yep.
And it's a big ask. Come on, it's a big ask. I quite like it. It's kind of growing up with new metal and Limp Bizkit and adoring them and stuff. To me, it's not that far away from it. So remove 25, 26 years from it. I'm all right about it. And I think the song, really like the riff. I think the vocal melody is really good. But generally, Iommi calls it crap, the whole album, even down to the cover art. Calls it crap,
yeah. Interesting point. Iommi hates it, yeah?
That's what he said in his book, Iron Man. But I think now he's re-releasing it, or they're going to remaster it, because he's like, oh, there is some good stuff on there. And I was like, Tony, I know. I'm telling you now.
Tony, if you're listening, we know.
We always knew.
So on Spotify, the album list goes as this. Well, Dehumanizer, and then the 1998 reunion.
Yeah.
The live album.
It's not on there. It's not on there.
It's not on Spotify. Could that be you, Tony? Are you preventing people from listening to Forbidden? Or is it because, as you just said, he's planning to do a remaster? So, take that one off, put a relatively better sounding remaster on. Potato.
There you go, bleeding potato.
That's what I'm saying.
So that might be down to Sharon Osbourne. She secured the name and really protected the brand after all of this.
That's true.
Because they did the reunion album, which I found a fact out that the song Selling My Soul doesn't have Bill Ward on it, because the whole point was there was 2 album tracks with the original OG lineup, and Bill Ward's only on Psycho Man. I think it's called Psycho Man. It's actually a drum machine on Selling My Soul.
Okay.
Which is weird. You listen to it and you kind of like, I kind of get it. You can hear the velocity not changing and maybe a bit plasticity.
Not a human. The drums have been dehumanized.
Oh, I like how you've done that then.
Oh, he's gone in there.
You're born for radio, I tell you.
You know it, kid. You know it. I got a face for radio, so.
Don't be so harsh. Wow, he's there. Well, make your mind up.
There There's another one. I'll tell you what, folks, this will never hit the light of day. This is definitely going to be cut. However, before we started recording this, he openly said to me, we can't have too many, my Mez. We can't have too many. And he's done about 1,500 and I've done 2. So make your minds up. Anyway, this is going to be cut. Doesn't matter. What was your next point going to be, Mark?
My next point was going to be that I listened to the album while doing research for this, and I found it pleasant. I didn't find it terrible. I viewed it on its own merit, not your merit.
Hey.
The song Can Get Close Enough sounds modern for the time. It's got a great groove. It's got a really solid main riff, and it does the pickety third thing where very popular in that kind of grunge era, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, where the song sounds like it's going to go to a minor tonality, but the melody goes to major. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Shaking Off the Chains has like an Iron Maiden style urgency to it, and ironically has like a Soundgarden structure in terms of like its melodic prowess. And the reason that's ironic is that Soundgarden were influenced by Black Sabbath. Like their whole point was, we want to be like Black Sabbath, but take all the rubbish stuff out.
To be fair, who doesn't want to be like Black Sabbath?
That's what I mean. Guilty as Hell has like a Sabotage era riff to it. Really meaty. You'll know what I mean. I would pick that one. If you're going to listen to any song, listen to Guilty as Hell. And the Kiss of Death bridge section rocks my socks. That is what I've put there.
I like that.
Rocks my socks.
I like that. Rocks my socks.
But again, didn't do very well. They go on tour. Tony Iommi's financing the whole tour. He gets carpal tunnel in his hand. They cancel the tour. And the band's kind of like broken up around 1997. Before, lo and behold, someone else comes a knocking. Oh, look, it's the reunion of the classic lineup. And then really we get some stability then, because all the way through the 80s, like 83, 84, up until 95, 96, 97, it's just not great. It's just not great.
I think 1995, obviously, as we mentioned before, grunge, new metal, a lot of things were coming to light. And I think it made a lot of bands a little bit uncomfortable. And I think they were trying to do things that maybe they hadn't done before, or they were over-trying, or they were losing confidence, or, I mean, there could be any number of reasons. I wasn't in Black Sabbath in 1995. I wasn't in Metallica in 1995. I wasn't in Iron Maiden in 1995. But that's what I think. What's your take on that, Marv?
Well, I mean, don't put yourself down. You could have easily been in Black Sabbath in 1995.
Well, I was one, but I mean, it's possible. I suppose.
Very possible. I think it just comes down to stuff like they invented or pioneers of heavy metal, and they popularized it, and they were such an influence to all of these bands. And then the 80s hit, and then rock music, as we know, metal changed. So they kind of had to change with it. But then when you've got band members leaving, Ozzy is so iconic, and Dio, another amazing iconic singer,
name.
And then Ian Gillan, an iconic huge singer.
Absolutely.
You think that you can repeat the process, and then things start crumbling. I think their manager was taking a lot of their money. They were getting screwed over a lot, and you just have to keep swimming. You have to keep going, and then the 90s hit. So then grunge happens, a different musical movement happens, and then what do? Do you stick to your guns because you're this thing and that's what you know how to do? It does get very hard, but I think overall people like the brand, people like the overarching story, the rags to riches, or like from going right into the top, falling down, then going back up again. Everyone likes a success story, and the way Black Sabbath have ended in terms of maybe touring for now was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't get Bill Ward back. That was quite a big like news thing when it was happening. But I think got Brad Wilkin from Rage Against the Machine to record, and I haven't listened to 13. I might have to go listen to it this week, because to me, the snippets that I heard just sounded like the first 2 albums, which again, that's a very Rick Rubin thing to do, which he produced it. Go back and listen to earlier stuff, what makes it good. But it was so nice to like see clips of the tour, and that's how Sabbath should have gone out, and they did. So that whole story is really fascinating, and that's why we're talking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I know a little bit of 13, I mean, I'm not going to tell you Porky Pies here, Marv. It is not Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. It is not Volume 4. It is not Sabotage. It's not Master of Reality. There's a certain charm to it. The most memorable song that pops to mind right now is God is Dead.
Yeah.
I do believe it's called. It's quite funny I say that, but the only thing I can really remember is part of the chorus. But the fact that I gave it not a lot of time, and I can still remember that from a long time ago, it's got to say something. I mean, I adore Black Sabbath, as we know. Into the Void, don't even get me started.
Don't even get me started on any of those albums, the Aussie era albums, the first 5. Do not get me started. What a run.
What a run. Oh my God. To me, Black Sabbath is one of those bands that I could just... If somebody's got early Sabbath, like the first 5 albums, they go, do you want to listen to some Sabbath? I'm going to go, yeah, because I don't care what they put on, because they've got the first 5 albums. You put on whatever you want, son.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy it as if it was the first time I ever listened to it. And like I said, 13, from what I remember, I don't hate it. But I think I'm going to join you. That means I've got to listen to 3 albums this week.
But you put yourself in that, yeah. You got to listen to 3 albums now. I mean, I can always pick one to kind of see as well, but I'm going to stick with my 2. I think that'd be all right.
Stick with your 2. I'm going to go and listen to X Factor, S&M, and 13. Yeah, I'm going to have a go.
So yeah, I think the story of Sabbath is really interesting, and Iommi being the primary songwriter, I think if he left, it would crumble completely. So
absolutely,
I guess that's a saving grace in that regard. But obviously, Geezer wrote the lyrics. Ozzy came up with melodies, amazing. Bill Ward is Bill Ward, but
Bill Ward's class.
You know, look at the photos which we were looking at earlier. Like they reconvened for Live Aid. So Geezer Butthead left in 1984, and at this point it was just Tony Martin and no original members. They reunite for Live Aid, OG lineup. Bill Ward, like you described, looked like a child had dressed him.
He genuinely does. I'm sorry, Bill, but you do, son.
Ozzy's kind of like very relaxed. It's almost like he's wearing like a kimono thing and very, very permed up hair.
Yeah.
Very well did. Geezer's kind of looking like Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
Red from the bottom down, yeah.
I respect the dedication of the red shoes and the red trousers, but they don't go well with purple. Come on, Geezer. Sort it out.
Come on, mate. Go back to 1985 and sort it out. And Iommi, just, very flary jacket. Very, that. Even that's the OG lineup, they look nothing like what I envision Black Sabbath looked like, especially in the 70s run. But again, they do that. They split off, do the separate things. I think Geezer then comes back, but then leaves within the year. And you go to a year later, and it's Tony Iommi and random people. Jeff Nichols on the side, long-time keys. Tony Martin in the middle, and I don't even know the other 2 people, to be honest with you. Eric Singer, the drummer, who would eventually be the drummer for Kiss. But, essentially, who are these people? I don't even know. That's not even Black Sabbath, looking at that.
No.
Like, it's Tony Iommi. I get that, but it just doesn't... Nothing about that screams to me Black Sabbath.
No, not at all. Interestingly enough, I have a magazine talking about the early birth of metal.
Yeah.
And the photo before me looks very much like... when you hear of those bands that did so much for a genre, but don't really exist anymore, and they only existed for like a year or 2.
Yeah.
That's what that photo looks like to me. As you said, you don't see that photo and go, Black Sabbath. You see that photo and go, Tony Iommi and his mates at the pub having a drink. Why is he wearing makeup? You know what I mean? No judgment, Tony. Please keep writing riffs. Never stop.
Oh, never stop the riffs.
Never stop. Never stop.
There was a funny anecdote. They were on a tour and they were playing. See if I can find my notes.
Here we go.
They were playing a gig, and Tony Martin had jumped off the stage in between the barrier where the audience and the stage is. And before he could start running around, security picked him up and chucked him out because they thought he was a fan that got on the stage.
Wow.
And he had to say to them, "No, I'm the singer." And they were like, "Yeah, of course you are, mate. Yeah, right." He's like, "No, I'm the singer." Like, because apparently he was getting an ego at that point, calling Naomi and, you know, showing people, like, recording, like, that's me singing. But, like, imagine that. Like, you're in Black Sabbath, you're the second longest serving member, singer, and you're not even recognised.
That's awful. That is awful. Like you can't even fathom that, can you?
No.
Dude, I'm sorry. That's awful.
I can't think of another instance where that's happened.
There is. That's got to leave a bad taste in the mouth, hasn't it? Really.
I mean, bear in mind that he'd been in the band since what? 87.
Jesus.
And they toured a lot, and they've done a lot of albums. So, like, people going to see Sabbath shows would know that he's the singer.
Maybe lay off him a bit. Maybe give him be a little bit nicer to the people trying to create the art that you want to consume.
Exactly. I think, again, everything is all context, and some people just listen to music and don't go in depth about it. But someone like me, someone like you, I want to know the backstory. I want to know what albums they had before and after that album. I want to know everything about the band members to get more engrossed in it, to just further my experience of that record, of the band.
Absolutely. And this is where context comes into play and why it's so important. Absolutely.
I think that's it in terms of the albums I can think of, the albums I want to discuss.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have any albums. I do have one more band I'd like to bring up in terms of lineup changes and integral. And we really are going to have to think about wrapping it up soon because we've been here for nearly 3 hours.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, we're going to make this probably into about an hour, maybe an hour 10, but we're coming up to 3 hours, definitely. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun for me editing this. Awesome.
So the last band I have are, coincidentally, the first band I ever got into, Status Quo. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all know, but for those of you who don't, Status Quo is obviously a hard rock boogie band that started in the late 60s. They have notable number ones, but today we're going to discuss their 80s weird phase. It was interesting. A lot of cocaine was consumed, but yeah, so they had a weird phase in the 80s. We've discussed Margarita Time before.
Terrible.
Marv hates it. I am not averse to it. I'm not averse to it.
Give me In the Army Now over that so much. In the Army Now, what a bop. What a banger.
That is a good bop. I'll give you that. But Margarita Time, so Marv would have got on well with the bassist, the original bassist, a guy called Alan Lancaster, because he also hated Margarita Time.
Good guy.
But, I mean, things were kind of going downhill anyway before that. So there's a video on Top of the Pops of when they released Rockin' All Over the World. And there's a puppet of him. Like, an actual puppet of him whilst they're miming Rockin' All Over the World. Very weird.
Wow.
But anyway, so bassist Alan Lancaster, I've had enough of this. And Margarita Time and that whole period lost a lot of hardcore Quo fans. A lot of people couldn't get on with that. They did a reunion tour in 2013 where it was just the four of them, being the original lineup: Rick Parfitt, Francis Rossi, Alan Lancaster, and a guy called John Coughlin, who I've met, the original drummer. And yeah, that was actually mostly good. I won't lie. It was okay. But yeah, now I feel like, because they're still releasing albums, and actually, I believe Backbone was their latest, and I don't hate it. It's okay. They broke the Guinness World Record to be the only band to have a number one in every single decade since 1960, I believe.
Oh, amazing.
Which is not something a lot of people know. But yeah, it's kind of the Francis Rossi show, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's all he knows. Like, that's his life.
That's it. That's
and
it.
Why, and again, why should he stop his job?
No.
That he's earned a good living from, and he's earned that reputation and earned the right. That's what I was going for. He earns the right to do that. It's just, should he do it under Status Quo's name? Should he go solo instead and kind of build it around that and still play the songs? But then is he then degrading the name of Status Quo, the band of Status Quo? Does he just stay as Status Quo? It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, that is very much a case of. It all depends how you quantify it. Again, it doesn't offend me. In actual fact, before COVID hit, I'm sure everybody's aware of that. I was actually planning on going and seeing them at the Bath Forum last October.
What, banging out Suzanne, or whatever her name is?
Suzanne.
What's her name?
Rochelle.
That's not true.
Come on, sweet Rochelle. You're my... Yeah, I'd like to see him just one more time.
Banging out the hits.
Just one more time. Because before long, there's going to be another acoustic album. Do not talk to me about the acoustic Status Quo albums.
We'll get on to stuff like that. Reimagining of songs.
Well, I'll just give a little precursor. I think the best song on acoustic, right, is... So yeah, that's what I think. That's my opinion. Not everyone's, but that's mine. And I'm entitled to it.
Oh, I can't wait for that episode. That's going to be great.
Yes. Yeah, I can wait for it, funnily enough. But yeah, so that was my last band. I'm all out of bands. I'm never out of bands. We could be here for another 4 hours.
For ages. An honourable mention, I'll say, is Fleetwood Mac Time, which...
Oh, yes, you wanted to... Yes.
Guess what year that came out in?
Oh, I don't know, Marv. Was it 1995?
Yeah, I think it was 1995. So
interesting.
It's a testament that you got to get 2 guitarists to replace 1 guitarist.
We can all see why. Has anybody heard Lindsey Buckingham? We can all see why.
So good. So this has happened now recently because he's quit the band, and they've got the guy from Crowded House and the guy from Tom Petty in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but they've got Stevie Nicks. But at this point, this is 1995, so Stevie Nicks had gone, Lindsey Buckingham had gone, Christine McVie had quit touring in 1990.
Okay.
I assume was still recording. So you've got Dave Mason from Traffic. Becca Bramlett was the woman who's singing. And if I can find the... No, I'm not using Wikipedia. What are you on about?
Oh, that could be incorrect.
Everything
can change
could be incorrect.
That's fine, that. Just do some more of the band shit. Let's get through this.
So, Billy Burnett was the guitar player. And Becca Bramlett was now the singer. So they were replacing Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, respectively, on top of Dave Mason also replacing Buckingham. And the album is weird.
I bet.
It sounds like a country album. It sounds very of the time. You know what I feel like about saxophone, right? So,
oh, yeah.
I don't mind the saxophone as a musical instrument. I think
That's a
in
lie.
jazz songs, it ain't a lie. I think in jazz songs, I think in its right context, is good. There's a few pop songs, Careless Whisper, True, Baker Street, quintessential. You need the saxophone. Anything else doesn't sound right. But anytime there's a saxophone solo on any song, I'm automatically thinking B&Q Garden Centre. I'm looking at some hydrangeas thinking, how much is this compost? I've got to try and put it on the car. What am I... it's too much. What's the point? We're leaving. I can't stand it. So this album doesn't have any saxophone, but all the music sounds like it should have saxophone on it. So it's ultimately just as bad in my head. There are a couple of good songs. There's a acoustic song called I'll get there. I want to say it's called Dream in the Dream. It's lovely. It's very, very nice. It's very good, good kind of dual guitar playing. Down for it. But everything else, like there's a really, really dated electric piano sound on it. It just sounds very, just very dated, just very slick, very soulless. I think it's very soulless.
Okay.
Nothing that they're really saying is meaningful, especially for a band like Fleetwood Mac, where, you look at Rumours. How
Feelings
is that?
Everything, yeah.
Feeling is everything in that band.
Definitely.
And then there's the last track, These Strange Times. Mick Fleetwood actually does some spoken word on it. I don't mind it. It's got a good atmosphere to it, but as a whole, if I had to sum up what a band versus something like Forbidden, where it still sounds like Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Even if the singer sounds different, it still sounds like Black Sabbath. This album, to me, does not sound like Fleetwood Mac. The Christy McVie songs that are on here kind of do. They're very, very dated. And the interesting thing there is that she did her songs in a different studio and used a session guitarist.
Okay.
So they got these two new guitarists that aren't even on the whole album, and then you're listening to someone else playing, and it's just like, what's the point? What is the point?
That's a bit odd, yes.
This lineup, I think, split within a year anyway. Buckingham and Nix came back. They did the Dance album, big success. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
I wish Lindsey Buckingham would come back, but again, I'm not in that band, and it must be so many awkward dynamics in that band. But not their greatest. But Fleetwood Mac are very much ups and downs. But still, I think that's the most impact I've seen on a band in terms of band members changing. So there you go.
Okay.
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Good little episode there. So hope that was somewhat informative. I think we did waffle on for way too long, but I mean, we'll make it work in the edit. And as a little send-off, I'm going to play a little song that I produced back in probably 2009 or 10. I made the beat for my friend JM. I think it goes under the Nice One JM. I'll put a link in some sort of description somewhere. But it's called Real Recognize Real. I quite like the beat.
Very cool.
It's one of the best ones I feel like I did when I first started making beats. And enjoy it. Or not, up to you. Let us know if there's any other bands we've missed out with band member changes that are drastic. If there's anything you can figure out that's more than 100, be good. And we'll be back next week for another one. So, yeah. Love that. See you later then.
When my lyricists out, what? When my lyricists out, when my lyricists out, when my lyricists out, what? When my lyricists out, when my lyricists out, when my lyricists out, what? When my lyricists out, when my lyricists out, when my lyricists out. When did you fall in love with hip-hop? Years 99, age 11. Wanted something more than top of the pops. Needs a Trowbridge was the best stop. Cop the illest hip-hop. New album in the Walkman with that pocket money guap. Over a decade later, grab a mic, rock a party, put me on. Peace, love, union, having fun like KRS-One. Who am I? The MC, master of the ceremony. What you gonna do like Joe Felony? Believer in God, unlike Richard Dawkins. Get the crowd screaming like Jay Hawkins. Walk in, grab the mic, the clutch fist. Never spoken for, don't need a ventriloquist. Hip-hop, recognise, I love it, man. Don't look now, I end up like Donald Sutherland. Question that? No doubt, like soap, I'ma use this bar to wash your mouth out. Real, recognise, real. We're still rockin' mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real. Real, recognise, real. We're still rockin' mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real. Don't watch the throne, no clone. I do not condone weak shit in my zone. Give me the microphone first, a bit of Snoop D-O double G. Trowbridge in the house. Now you know you in trouble against me. Yo G, wagwan. Call me cheesy, slap in my face, call it Parmesan. JM3 falling like Jerry Maguire. Daughters by my side to keep me inspired. Classic, like vinyls and cassettes. Izzy dope you ought to know, like Alanis Morissette. Stay focused, try not to get stressed. Out like a Tribe Called Quest, and I still have faith like Evans. One day united in the kingdom of heaven. If I blow up and get seen everywhere like being John Malkovich, still be John Murphy, let the haters bitch. Real recognise real, we're still rock a mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real. Real recognise real, we're still rock a mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real. Some have no class and some ain't as sick. Where's the classics? Do the arithmetic, rhythmatic, shock like static, bump that shit. Third verse in the back of the net, like a hat trick. Married with kids, couldn't live with mum and dad forever. First flat was peak, like kids who wear a new era. Super bad like Jonah Hill and Michael Cera. Skate the streets, but we'll love to skate the barracks with Barra styles. Raw, upset, uppity toffs at Ascot. Put egg on my face, swinging like John Prescott. Life's a test, Abraham tested by God. Drank in town, never zoning on COD. Seen orange wannabe wags looking like David Dickinson. Shit the tan in bed, real shit, I'm kicking son. Disagree with 3/4 of the British public requisite of sanity. Oscar Wilde for your pub quiz. Real recognise real, we're still rock a mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real. Real recognise real, we're still rock a mic, whether have a deal or no deal. Keeping ear to the underground like John Peel, like Cheryl Lynn. It's got to be real.
Sounds like the one I heard yesterday.
Couldn't have been.
No?
No.
Yes, what is it?
May I have your autograph?
Autograph?
Please?
I
Yes,
can't
please.
write, I'm sorry.
I've got a new book space
Yeah, but I'm
for
very
it.
busy.
I've come a long way, you know.
Yes. Equally long way to go back, too, isn't it? Yes. Goodbye.